Well, Michael, I'm very sorry that there's no cheesecake, but you had
it is great to be up.
You had some swordfish, for God's sake.
Oh my gosh.
My
My head is swimming.
Now, you've been down in the mines and you've been digging up all this
we've
stuff.
got so many people, their heads are swimming with what's coming out now.
I know, and you don't even get to raise your head up to see the crazy stuff happening that Betsy and I have to keep track of, the current news everywhere in the whole world.
Right, I heard you just got trashed the other day.
I got trashed, yeah. But guess what?
I heard you
because it was
had a
false.
good comeback.
It was I was a little emotional. And so, as you know, we're going to be talking about limited hangouts and who to listen to and how you develop discernment so you know if somebody's telling the truth, how to track it back, so on and so forth. But yeah, somebody attacked AIM for Truth, American intelligence media, and said some lies that they put in print. And so, yeah, they better be prepared for that. But you know what? I am not into trashing anybody in the alternative news. Everybody's trying their hardest. Right. And, if they make a mistake and they're ready to retract it, fine.
You know what? We're all imperfect people. And
exactly.
We're not going to do everything perfectly. And that's one of the things that kind of drives me nuts about the alternative media is the way everybody's constantly looking for somebody to criticize and trash. I think we've got to be unified here because the enemy is quite organized.
And we don't have to agree. Now, as you know, since we started this, we've had just about everybody call us up and want to interview us or have us interview them, right? And we vet people, and most of the time we don't really work with too many other people. Now and then when we see somebody doing something cool, we might interview them, but it doesn't mean we completely support everything they believe.
Let me ask you this. I don't think, from what I know about you, that's because you don't want to talk to them. It seems to me you realize you only have so many hours in a day, and if you just chased all of the opportunities, you could fill your day up easily, right?
And we're not into speculating.
Right.
And, and if I'm going to interview somebody, then they need to be an expert in what they're talking about. Or if they're going to interview me, they need to interview something that I know something about, right? So, what we've done is basically we vet people, and most of the time we just say no, and we say no, and then we don't ever really trash anybody. I think the only people we've ever been in direct conflict with was some people who trashed us. And that needs to stop across the board. But at the same time, dialogue needs to happen where people say,
right.
I'm sorry, I don't agree with you.
Right. It's okay to disagree.
Yeah.
That's the whole point of dialogue.
It's free speech. That's why we do what we do, for heaven's sakes. And it's a very slim slice of reality now that still allows free speech with all that's going on, which we've, talked so much about. But free speech is being curtailed in America as fast as they curtailed it in Europe and particularly in Britain. And I think that when they cut off, hundreds of conservative sites?
Right.
They demonetized the internet so that the people who were doing YouTubes couldn't make money off of it, and many of them just dropped off. Others they've attacked, Twitter sites that they've attacked. I mean, hundreds and hundreds.
So what is the end result of that? It seems to me that it's so obvious that it's violating the Constitution. I think one of the things I'm hearing from people who call us is that they're frustrated that those that we have put in charge of these subjects in government are not doing anything about it. And that seems to me reaching a crisis point now because so many people are getting cut off. We've experienced it in our site with various types of shenanigans going on where hundreds of thousands of documents are just deleted overnight. Or in some of our other friends' accounts, their whole sites are just knocked down. And so you can't do that. I mean, if we're going to have a republic and we're going to have free speech, we can't do that. So where are the authorities that are enforcing our laws? That's the question on the table right now.
Yes, and the concept that the internet isn't owned by America is nonsense. ICANN is nonsense. Stephen Crocker is nonsense. He didn't give away ICANN power. Recently there was an article saying that ICANN has a man in the middle. ICANN has a man in the middle. Now, you're about the only person
I can believe that.
Did you get the article I sent you?
I saw it, but I haven't read it yet.
That's
but
what
I
it's
can
saying.
believe that.
And what are they saying? The IP addresses are one thing, but what's the other thing? The DNSs. Okay. There's the man in the middle now controls the DNSs.
Well, that's
and can turn off all the numbers if they want.
Douglas, isn't that consistent with the digital keys?
Yes.
Isn't that it's the same concept? These people are not that creative now that we're starting to unearth all of their the way they think about how to take over things. And so what they're doing is they're creating all these, quote, public-private partnerships where they'll take a government responsibility and delegate it to a private corporation, which in fact their friends own in the background. And then they all have, everybody's got deniability in the process. And so the idea that ICANN has created a man in the middle is just an extension of the Federal Bridge Authority that the government created years ago to privatize the encryption keys.
And you said when it went out of Stephen Crocker's hand, who from the beginning assigned the ICANN IP addresses.
From 1993, by the way.
One guy and we just recently, it's now been in articles, he had a corporation that owned that. Personally owned it.
I haven't seen that.
Okay, that's what I'm saying. This article was shocking to me because you also said at the time, not possible. America is not giving away, because it was that evil group that went after you in the went after patents early on, and they said, and Stephen Crocker was the guy who controlled this. One guy, and then one day, the myth comes up that he's going to turn it over to an international organization to do it, and we're like, you're sitting there saying, no, something's wrong here. That's just wrong.
Well, that was Obama,
right? So it didn't happen. And do we know to this very day yet who does assign those ICANN numbers? Because he doesn't anymore. We don't even know what international group does. But now we do know that the middleman, the man in the middle, can now turn off all IP addresses, change them, intercept them, and just like Hillary with the crypto keys and the certification authority, every single communication is controlled 100%, but we don't even know who controls it.
Maybe I could bottom line that for everyone who, this may be slightly esoteric. When you type in a name into your browser and want to go to a site, that there's a lookup table that browser then looks up to see what the actual physical street address is on the internet for that website that you want to go to. So all they have to do now is take that name off the list, or say you can't go to that site, and you're off. You can't ever get there. That's how easy this is. It's the reason it's complicated because we're talking about potentially billions of internet numbers. But the fact is, it's a very simple list. One column is the name. The second column is the street address.
I'm so glad you're here because you're going to be able to clarify some things for us, and I'm so glad that Betsy turned on the tape recorder, because here, that's a joke.
It's not a tape recorder. I have to remind him that it's not a broadcast and we're not on air.
I'm a Luddite, and I'm sitting here with the guy who created social media, right? I mean, you can't get any more opposite. I was in the NSA, and I rejected all of that. Right?
Well, what you learned hasn't really changed. It's just gotten faster.
Isn't that amazing? Okay, so now you've been down in the mines. So I've mentioned these things to you in telephone conversations, but dig it. Vlad the Impaler Putin is he's cutting himself off. And I've said this to you, and you said, yes, that can happen. And nobody else in the world wants to admit this can happen. Vlad the Impaler Putin is cutting himself off from the internet and is creating an intranet that is not going to be spied on. Now, we know that the same thing happened for China when Eric Schmidt set up Dragonfly, which he said won't be operative for 2 more years, and we now know that it's 100% operative. And so China can cut itself off from the American-created, owned and operated, weaponized military internet, which we paid up until the point that it went across the ocean, but the second it connects to another country, we brought that to them. Those are our lines.
Right.
We could cut off our enemy. If Russia is spying on us through the internet and they can cut themselves off from the internet and have an intranet, an internal system instead of an external system, then we can cut them off. Is that correct?
No, because the Brits are not going to let us go. We didn't win the war, and we're still subjects to their rule.
Right. The international all the internet connections are undersea cables. There's satellite connections, so it's not one thing. And so to completely cut somebody off is a massive undertaking.
But barring satellites, I didn't say satellites.
Okay.
I said lines.
Okay.
Barring satellites, which, by the way, I knew the guy who developed the plan before Eric Schmidt got to China. I literally know the guy who was being paid to put the satellites into space and create 5G 10 years ago for China. So don't tell me that this is new technology and we need to rush.
Right.
No. It was a military secret called active denial. China came out 2-3 days ago, and what did they say? Oh, we've gone beyond active denial. We now make the burning sensation that will make you run away once you aim 5G at them.
Is safe.
No,
and that
it's
the
5G.
wall is going to protect you, and that there's a safe version of 5G.
We're going to.
Okay.
Can we go back? Well, let's go back to that wall thing.
I know, but we're going to do a special video on that, so I should just be quiet.
No, we're on it now. So 5G, active denial, is a weapon that the military's been using for decades.
Right.
Why is it now we have to have it? Because China was going to install it for next to nothing through Qualcomm.
How is that related to what you mentioned before? The God weapon. What was that you said? The God weapon. The one that can make everybody go to sleep.
That's it. Active denial.
That's it.
Yeah.
Okay. What's the popular name for it in the military?
Active denial.
No, there's another name. God something.
Poppers or God. It's called
poppers. That was it.
Poppers.
Yeah. Okay.
No, these have been used for a long, long time. I mean, this is old military military equipment that is now going to be used on us. Why is it being used on us?
Well, when you think about it, when you're talking about radio waves, there's a bandwidth that's available across the spectrum. That bandwidth has been known for 100 years.
Yeah.
So consequently, there's nothing new about what's going on, and you know that they've been investigating the effects of these different frequencies on people for decades, many decades. So what we're seeing now is a long trek to get here. They've just figured out how to combine that with the social media access to everybody on the planet through the Internet of Things, so that they could actually weaponize that technology and target it on you as an individual. That is new. That is scary.
And that's experimentation. That's what I was doing in the military and NSA with microwaves. We went up into milliwaves or millimeter
But you couldn't
waves.
target it on an individual. You could do it in a region, right, or an area.
Well, let's just say that some people, not that I would have known them or that I was in any part of it, targeted Russians and were very effective at using it as a weapon. So microwaves have been used as a weapon since the early 70s. And to mount it on every cell tower is insane. And to use diffuse microwave is basically to create that we're swimming in these waves. And when I say microwave, then I say milliwave, which should be millimeter, but it's so when we say 5G, you're talking about what they're going to be using is like 24 gigahertz, well, up to 9 to 24 gigahertz, right? No. They can go as high as you want. There is no limit.
But as I understand it, with the implementation of 5G and these local transponders that they're going to put every 100 meters, it can be one wavelength coming down from the satellite, but then they can magnify that
Correct.
to whatever extent they want, and they can plug in all the electricity they want into the transponder and then up the gain so that it could literally fry your brain.
It is called beamforming technology. And if the satellites, if it's coming from, or it's even coming from any antenna, let's say you're standing there with your cell phone in your driveway. The nearest antenna is on your right-hand side. And you have your phone on the left-hand side of your head and you're using an old phone that you hold to your head. You went from 24 gigahertz to 100 gigahertz. That is enough to fry anybody's brain.
Okay, so the difference between 24 and 100 is not linear, right? The
no,
effect
it's
that
practically exponential.
Okay. So it's not like, oh, you doubled it or you tripled it.
No, it's like
You're
exponential.
saying it could be 1,000 times more.
Well, that's why they say 5G is going to make us have anywhere from 10 to 1,000 times the speed. Well, they're correct, because when you're beamforming, it will be 1,000 times faster.
There you go.
It won't be faster. It's the connectivity. Okay?
But
if you don't have a phone that is actually working on a 5G level, you won't even be able to take advantage of that. You know what? We're going to have 5G everywhere. You know the only people going to be using it? Techies and people who have to have the newest smartphone and driverless cars. That's who's going to be using it.
Yeah, but the potential of it being weaponized against us as human beings and all life forms, that's pretty appalling. And I am very disappointed that we are hearing from the White House that they're all gung-ho about 5G. I want to know who's advising President Trump on this horrific choice to move forward with 5G. And I realize that there could be all kinds of nuances in that tweet, but the American people need to wake up and see what's being played on us, because it'll be a silent killer. They'll put them all out on your street. Everybody will be told all the fun, good things it does. And then the next thing you know, those Deagle reports that you saw where the population of America was down by 200 million, like in a few years, well, there's your answer.
Well, who's advising him right now on this issue?
Nobody. The FCC is running like a rogue agency. These agencies are running like rogue. Trump isn't in charge of them. He keeps having to fire even the people that he puts there, and they keep being obstructed by the senior executive service members, the status quo bureaucrats who don't let anybody do anything, including the President of the United States. Like, look how Congress is a complete joke, right? All these investigations, no indictments, no trials, nobody arrested. They make recommendations demanding that Chris Steele be investigated by the Department of Justice and immediately be picked up by the FBI as a spy, because he is. Nothing. So the Congress can't do anything. They're trying to make the executive branch completely dead, and they're trying to curtail him, and he is doing a great job resisting. Because why? The corrupt Justice Department has taken over for everything. Because no matter what, it goes back to a dadgum court where some person who's a judge who thinks they're higher than the rest of us, with capriciousness, makes whatever decisions they want in contradistinction to the Constitution, taking away the executive power, taking away even congressional power to make laws, negating laws. It's insane.
So we're saying it's the SES 500 running out of the Department of Justice that really run the country, is what you're saying.
Well, certainly they control the SES, and somebody gives them directives, and we have found
they pay the bill.
We've named the union that controls them.
Right.
There was a union that controls them, and they consider themselves to be, literally, this is what they call themselves, military generals. Each one of the head SES people believe that they are military generals in charge of the 76 different 54 agencies and the other total 76 sub-agencies and all that are run by SES members. Every single federal agency is run, including courts, are run by SES members.
Well, now that's a good indication that your channel that you're listening to might be a limited hangout, is if they are not drilling down with SES. And I'm not talking about a casual mention so they can say, oh yeah, I talked about that. But these are enemies of American citizens. Your channel should be pounding on it all the time.
Right. If they're not, then clearly there's a reason they're not. So the question is, what's the reason? Why would they not be talking about something that is well documented and is clearly the stay behind network that we've all heard about, that Obama left behind, that Bush left behind, that Clinton left behind, that are really controlling our government?
They take an extra vow to their own flag, to their own laws. Most of our laws that affect the civil service are all, that doesn't affect the SES. They don't even have to be U.S. citizens. They don't have to have background checks. And yet they're made generals of an agency that they may know nothing about. This is the same thing and then they take separate vows. And these vows are to their agency. This is to the senior executive service. They literally take vows. You have it. They take a vow, right? We've seen these freaking vows. The same kind of vows that the Jesuits took, which were extraordinary vows beyond what any other priest, because they made themselves soldiers of the Pope. And they literally said they would go out and kill for the Pope, and the Pope gave them already absolution for going out to do the dirty deeds that they were going out to do purposefully to protect the Pope.
You mentioned the Jesuits, and if you recall in the research that has been done by a whole group of people, you go back 100 years and you look at Cecil Rhodes, the guy who funded the Rhodes Scholarships, and you see in his memoirs, his notes, his words, that he admired the Jesuits as the perfect model for establishing a one world government, to use the Jesuits' mechanism. So what you're saying is that's what we have in this country. Well, we can also see that that's what Britain implemented in England. So we've got this consistency over at least 100 years of this Jesuit-style takeover of our governments toward some objective, which it appears to be this 200-year Cecil Rhodes plan for the New World Order. So I think that the what, where, and why are starting to come into focus. But the question I still have is there anybody left in Washington that's going to start implementing enforcing the constitutional rule of law? Because it doesn't seem like they are right now. When's that going to change? Who's going to change it?
Well, I think out of the last 100 judgments and determinations I've heard from a court, maybe 2 or 3 were truthful and correct. So we're beginning to slowly see it. But it isn't in government we're going to see this. We're going to see it in the Court of Public Appeal. For instance, people keep saying, nobody has been arrested. Look, the top dogs from the DOJ, the State Department, the FBI, and the CIA have stepped down, run away, taken early retirement, been fired, been moved.
Yeah, because they're all in on this deal.
Well, look at that. People want to say nothing's been done. Why did that happen? I'll tell you why it happened. Because alternative news brought it out and stuck it in their face so many times that it became common knowledge that they could no longer ignore. Now you hear everybody, even in the mainstream media, referring to it as a coup d'etat. What? Who besides us called it a coup d'etat from the early, when it first started? And if necessary, we need a court of the people. We need to do what they did in France. And if they want to call it a revolution, call it what they want. We call it law and order. And as you said, when will we see any lawfulness and the Obama-Hillary lack of law of following the law and the rule of law come back into our republic? We're beginning to see a little bit of that happen now. And guess what? There's not a single leader of any of the intelligence communities. I forgot to mention the disgusting Clapper. I always like to spit when I say his name because he's so disgusting and he looks like an orc. He looks like a hobgoblin.
Well, it's not what he looks like. He's a liar. He's a liar, a liar, a liar. And did you know that you can lie in Congress and it's legal? They made it legal to lie in Congress. For all we know, they probably made it legal to murder.
Well, they have. They're passing laws that make them allow. Well, they passed laws to kill a baby after the baby comes out of the womb, after the baby is born. That is murder.
That's right.
And there's nothing short of that. Hello?
That's just totally despicable. I'm totally ashamed of our government that would ever get to that point where we would have to be addressing that issue.
Liberty.
We have got to take over this country, take our country back.
When a baby is at its most vulnerable, in the birthing process, from the womb into this world, these monsters would say it's okay to murder this baby. This is horrific.
Well, but we finally figured it out because of your good work, and you posted some things. You've done some research on adrenochrome, which is what, $10,000 an ounce, I think, or a gram or something. Anyway, it's so expensive that, to get one tiny drop of it, you have to be quite wealthy. And to get enough to be effective, you have to spend millions of dollars. Well, that comes from these babies they torture as they are killing them through the abortions and then sell after they get the adrenochrome through their blood. Remember, their body is worth $40,000, but their blood may be worth millions if they torture the baby as they are killing the baby, calling it a late-term abortion. And this is a fact. It's well known. This is not a conspiracy. And when you realize that this kind of thing drives people, now what is, I think, very funny and interesting is the following. There have been multiple research reports that have come out showing that taking the blood of younger people doesn't help the old person one iota. That is a myth.
One of the things that our researchers have noticed is this pattern that among the investments that a lot of these people have, there is a big emphasis on blood-related companies. Mm-hmm. And it's more than you would expect to see in any group of people. And so that may explain it, that they're actually putting their money in companies where, because they're insiders, they can get inside deals on the supply.
And they're taking DNA samples, and now they're showing that the law enforcement agencies and breaches. All these companies that get your DNA have breaches, right? Oh, sorry, the data has been stolen. And then it goes to law enforcement agencies who use it, rogue law enforcement agencies and rogue CIA and others, who use it to blackmail people because they can figure out anything through DNA now. So they find the real criminal and blackmail them and make them an FBI agent. Mm-hmm. Asset. That's what they do. They take the biggest criminals there are, give them immunity, give them an immunity deal, and create FBI assets from them. And it makes me want to vomit. So, Michael, I'm so glad you came out of the mines, that the canaries haven't died, and that you're up here to have some conversations with us, because it's always so enlightening to us, and people just love it. And when we can talk really frankly, and we just have the microphone here before us, and it's comfortable, it's wonderful. So we're going to have further conversations about this, and we're going to see if we can catch up to speed and try some new things, because our producer, Betsy, has some good ideas for us.
She does too.